What is considered dangerous but is actually harmless? Hello everyone, write what you think about it in the comments. Let's go. Story 1. Garbage disposals. They're always shown in movies chewing someone's hand off, but there's very few injuries reported. In contrast, nail guns are more dangerous than any movie. Scores of severe injuries, even deaths. Story 2. Stepping on a crack. My mom's back is still fine, and I have stepped on so many cracks it's not funny. When I would get mad at her, I would look for cracks to step on. Story 3. Surprising number of people still believe MSG is harmful, even though it's no more dangerous than salt, and the LD50 is 5 times salt IRC. It's not only harmless, but truly elevates the flavor of food. Story 4. For an increasing number of people, vaccines. Vaccines are remarkably safe. Sure, there are some adverse reactions, but they're in the extreme, practically negligible minority. Story 5. Daddy long legs. Harvestmen. No, they don't have the most venomous bite of all spiders. And no, they're not true spiders. No, their fangs aren't small enough to penetrate our skin. They're one of the coolest critters you can find. As long as you're gentle, go ahead and pick them up, and watch them just chill all along your hands. Perfectly harmless, and the more you look at them, the more you respect them. Edit. Please ignore the grammar about their fangs. I'm too high to write anything else. Story 6. A lot of different snakes. I mean, if you're ever unsure, it's probably safer to treat it as you would any black mamba, a frequent encounter of our lives the world over. But you'll probably be fine if you just avoid it altogether. Story 7. Touching or just being around fentanyl. Lots of police officers think they overdosed simply from touching it. Not possible. Story 8. Cracking your fingers. Grew up hearing you'd break your fingers, but further research down the line showed that it's basically harmless. Story 9. Nuclear power. Since its invention, there have been less than 30 nuclear accidents. Of those, only 10 resulted in any loss of life, and of those, only 3 resulted in more than single-digit deaths. In total, about 4,500 people died in these accidents, and Chernobyl alone killed 4,000 of them. Story 10. There are entire cultures of people who have convinced themselves that having wet hair /feet /etc. will make you sick. It's entirely a myth. To expand on that, people who think being cold equals sign you will catch a cold. Also not true. You cannot catch a virus simply from being cold without being exposed to a virus. The irony of this is that controlled cold exposure, like being very cold for short periods of time, is actually beneficial for your immune system, and will make you less likely to get sick frequently compared to someone who avoids being cold and constantly seeks homeostasis. Story 11. A 2010 review of the evidence on cancer and well-done meat, conducted by researchers at Vanderbilt University, concluded that the majority of these studies have shown that high intake of well-done meat and high exposure to meat carcinogens, particularly HCAs, may increase the risk of human cancer. Heterocyclic amines, HCAs, which some experts also refer to as heterocyclic aromatic amines, HAAs, are a class of chemical that forms in cooked red meat and, to a lesser extent, in poultry and fish, according to a 2011 study in the journal Chemical Research and Toxicology. Another class of chemicals, called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, has also been linked to cancer. PAHs are formed when fat and juices from meat grilled directly over a heated surface or open fire drip onto the surface or fire, causing flames and smoke, according to a fact sheet published by the National Cancer Institute, NCI. The smoke contains PAHs that then adhere to the surface of the meat. Even if meat isn't charred or cooked at high temps, smoking meat can increase its levels of PAHs. Both HAs and PAHs are metabolized by enzymes in the body, and some of the byproducts of this process can cause DNA damage that may contribute to the development of cancer, suggests the research of Robert Tereski, an expert in cancer causation at the University of Minnesota. Story 12. Sharks, 99% of the time. Been diving with a variety of species of shark, and really they're pretty docile and even timid creatures in some cases. Granted, I've never dove with a bull or a great white that could be a different situation. On one of my last dives, I saw a black tip reef shark about my height in length, and he got scared and swam away. It's funny because sometimes that particular species will swim up to divers if they stay still more out of curiosity than anything. But if you start moving around, you'll scare the shark away. Story 13. Theme parks. People seem to believe that all of the rides are built by the theme park itself in a back lot with a team blind children. These things are all built and designed by engineering companies. There's a lot of science behind amusement park rides and how they work. Story 14. Most of the deadly animals in Australia. You're not at all likely to even encounter like 90% of them, especially if you're in a city, which most people are. Our snakes typically have slow-acting venom, which makes fatalities pretty rare, and to be bitten by a snake in the first place usually means you were messing with it. Crocodiles are easy to avoid, don't swim in unmonitored areas in the north. Same with sharks, who rarely even attack people. Story 15. As far as anybody can make out, LSD is actually pretty harmless, so long as you don't do insane doses and lose touch with reality and get traumatized or try to kill yourself or something. Like as a substance, chemically it does not seem to actually be of any real harm as compared to most any other drugs people take recreationally or otherwise. Story 16. Maybe not harmless exactly, but psychedelics. They were considered dangerous, very harmful. Most of the propaganda about how dangerous they were was made up or exaggerated. Now that they're being researched again, they're found to not only be non-addictive, but therapeutic. They can heal trauma, anxiety, help combat dangerous narcotic addiction, and even help existential dread from those facing the end of their lives. But for all the good, respect still needs to be given to ancient medicine. They aren't harmless to everyone. Story 17. Video games. They did an experiment where they took two groups of kids, tested their spatial awareness, etc. before the experiment started, then again after a set time, a month. Turns out the kids who played video games had better spatial awareness, better hand-eye coordination than the kids who played outside. Story 18. Sharks. As long as you're not pissing them off, invading their space, or imitating prey, they don't give a shit. People act like they're these terrifying movie monsters, and while they can be dangerous, they're not out to get you. They're animals just like everything else. Story 19. Lifting weights, deadlifting, and squatting in particular. As long as you recognize your limits and don't program either more volume or intensity than you can actually handle, you will never get hurt, and you will only get stronger and more resilient. People only fuck themselves up when they don't listen to their bodies. Story 20. The Bermuda Triangle. Okay, I wouldn't say it's harmless because it's the ocean, but it's not cursed like some people believe. Pretty much all of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle are explainable, and they aren't as common as people who believe in the legend would lead you to believe. Story 21. Whole lot of people here just saying stuff that an incredible minority thinks is dangerous but isn't. Like someone said planes? I'd put money on the vast majority does not consider planes to be dangerous, LOL. Someone said playing outside, LOL. Come on, people. I'm sure OP meant what the general population considers dangerous, not what 1/100th people considers dangerous. Story 22. MSG. It's about as dangerous as salt, but some dumbass in the 70s got a stomach ache after eating Chinese food and randomly decided it was the MSG. And then he wrote a newspaper article about it. That shit could have been a staple on every table in America for decades, but one fucking guy had to go and turn it into a dietary boogeyman. Story 23. One example of something considered dangerous but actually harmless is the fear of public speaking. Many people dread public speaking and perceive it as a dangerous or anxiety-inducing activity. However, with practice, preparation, and the right mindset, public speaking can become a manageable and even enjoyable experience for many individuals. Story 24. Having dessert in moderation. I swear every recipe video that even slightly resembles a dessert is full of comments saying diabetes and this is so unhealthy and health insurance isn't free. Like OMFG, it's gonna be okay if you have ice cream with your friends on a Friday night. Story 25. Maybe not 100% harmless, but more safe than most of people thinks. Sailing by ship in really bad weather. This is more annoying than dangerous. 10M waves looks incredible, but as long as you're inside and the ship has propulsion, everything should be fine. Story 26. Lane filtering on a motorcycle. It just passed in Colorado, and non-riders are having a panic attack about how dangerous it is when it's statistically 7x less likely for a lane-filtering motorcycle to be involved in a crash than one that isn't. People are very bad at risk assessment. Story 27. Car batteries. The sparks are terrifying, but it really can't hurt you. You can lick your fingers and touch both terminals, and nothing happens. You can put a wrench across both terminals while holding it, and it will spark, but it won't shock you. but if you hold it there long enough, the wrench will get hot enough that you will let go. Story 28, nicotine. It's real for cigarette smoke, which is very harmful. But nicotine itself is not the problem. And it's not poison at all, like caffeine. All the other stuff in burning cigarettes is the real problem. Nobody ever was dying from nicotine poison ever. It's simple, not possible. But everyone thinks nicotine is a poison. Story 29, the humble vinegaroon, or whiptail scorpion, depending on where you're from. Vinegaroons can make really good pets, despite looking like they crawled straight out of the 8th ring of hell. As scary as they look, they have good temperaments, and they're relatively easy to keep compared to a lot of bugs and arachnids. They can't sting, so they're almost entirely harmless, unless you scare them to the point where they try and pinch or bite you. But the ones I've interacted with were super chill and were more than used to human interaction. You'd have to fuck up really badly to get one of these things to hurt you. Seriously? Story 30. Breast milk after drinking alcohol. It's synthesized from the blood, so it has roughly the same alcohol percent as the blood. You would have to be obliterated to produce milk with alcohol levels higher than, say, a ripe banana. Doesn't stop everyone from dishing out dirty looks when I would nurse after a beer or two, though. Story 31. One thing I never understood was current over in Europe. Having 2 windows open in the house was much like inviting a death sentence. People would tell me I couldn't do it because I would catch illness. People wouldn't use fans in hot weather. Newborns weren't allowed out of the house for their first 30 days. I've never been able to see proof that current has caused any harm. Story 32. Undercooked pork. At least in the US, you are safe from trichinosis from farm-raised sources of pork. You can cook pork chops the same way you cook beef steaks. Wild hog meat and any omnivore wild game, especially bear, is the main way folks get trichinosis in today's world. This likely holds true for at least Europe and Australia too. I am not as well versed on Asian, African, or South American countries when it comes to this. Story 33, spiders, specifically spiders in Australia. Not harmless by any stretch, but they have a horrible reputation, especially when people think Australia, yet nobody has died from a spider bite there since 1979. Way overfeared for an animal that hasn't killed anyone for 25 years. Story 34. By themselves, panic attacks and short-term anxiety are not as dangerous as some think. Prolonged anxiety, stress, can lead to problems, but thinking that you're going to die from a panic attack or feeling anxious, stressed is generally an overreaction. People tend to make the symptoms worse by adding on the additional fear of the effects. Story 35, this is directed at certain people, TBH, but GMOs. I did a research project on them, and most of them are just veggies that have been selectively grown for favorable traits. Glowfish are also GMOs. Think of it like natural selection, but forced. I see sense speak for all of them, but that's perfectly safe. Natural and artificial flavors, however, are a different story. Story 36, tampons. I'm going back a few years, think 1979 1980ths. TSS, yet alone. You won't be a virgin anymore. BS. I get the pads for the first period or two. I don't get parents deny that option for their daughter. TG, I had to switch to them from pads. My mom wouldn't buy tampons for me. Why the had to? I joined the water polo team. If they wanted me to do sports, it was water polo or basketball. And they knew. I'd never make the BB team. I was a swimmer. She still wouldn't buy me a bra, never did. She was so weird. I'm glad I was adopted. Story 37. Several years ago, I was at my grandmother's house and told her I was hungry. She said she thought there were potato chips in the pantry. I didn't, though I should have known to check because they were the oldest, stalest chips. And when I checked the expiration date, they were 5 years old. Story 38. Smoking at gas stations. You could drop a lit cigarette in a bucket of gas, and it will actually put the cigarette out before the gas ignites. No, I don't think we should be open to the idea of smoking at gas stations, but it's actually not as bad as one might think. See, when you want to actually ignite gasoline, it takes a flame that is strong enough, but since a cigarette is just a slow-burning kind of thing, instead of an open flame, it does not have the power to ignite the gasoline. Please don't start smoking at gas stations either way, because many states have made it illegal. Also, they banned cell phone use at gas stations in many states, but it was disproven that a cell phone could put out enough energy to ignite gasoline, still a law, but no one really follows it. They also used to believe that the static electricity of getting out of the car, cloth seats, had the potential to ignite gasoline, but this myth has also been busted.